Hello, hello, hello. DM Geezer Jim here, continuing along with our RTFM, Read the Frickin' Manual. In this case, it's the Dungeon Master's Guide. We're going to continue reading through Chapter 3, the DM's Toolbox. We're going to touch on creating a magic item and probably creating a spell, seeing as they're both a little bit connected. Not very long sections here, so let's get into it. I'm going to read word for word, line for line, and then we will stop at the end of the video and offer a little bit of my personal commentary based on my experience. Thank you so much for joining us for this series. My goal is to get through the Dungeon Master's Guide beginning to end over the course of this series, and I appreciate you guys being here for it. So let's get into it. Creating a magic item is the next section in Chapter 3 DM's Toolbox. So, the magic items in Chapter 7 are but a few of the magic treasures that characters can discover during their adventures. You can modify these magic items or create new ones using the guidelines in this section. Rules for characters crafting magic items are in Chapter 7. Note differences there. Modifying a magic item. You can create a new magic item by tweaking one or more existing ones. Suggestions are provided in the sections that follow. Altered capabilities. One capability can replace a similar one. For example, a potion of climbing could become a potion of swimming. An altered form. You can alter a magic item's form while leaving its properties intact. For example, you can turn a ring of ram into a wand or a cloak of protection into some other worn object without altering the item's properties. Altered damage types. An item that deals damage of one type could instead deal damage of another type. For example, a flame-tongued sword could deal lightning damage instead of fire damage. Combining items. You can merge the properties of two magic items of the same rarity into a single item, provided no more than one of them requires attunement. For example, you could combine the properties of a helm of comprehending languages with those of a helm of telepathy into a single helmet. This makes the item more powerful and probably increases its rarities, but it won't break your game. Special features and sentience. Chapter 7 has rules for giving magic items interesting histories, minor properties, quirks, and sentience. This is not for you. This is our Chapter 3 toolbox, our new guys. A lot more details in 7. So creating a new item. If modifying an item doesn't quite fulfill the need, you can create one from scratch. A magic item should either let a character do something they couldn't do before or improve the character's ability to do something they can already do. For example, a ring of jumping lets its wearer jump greater distances, thus augmenting what a character can already do. A ring of the ram, however, gives the character the ability to deal force damage. The simpler your approach, the easier it is for a character to use the item in play. Giving the items charges is fine, especially if it has several different abilities, but simply deciding an item is always active or can be used a fixed number of times per day might be easier to manage. Power level. If you make an item that lets a character kill whatever they hit with it, that item will likely unbalance your game. On the other hand, an item whose benefit rarely comes into play isn't much of a reward. Use the magic item power by rarity table as a guidance to help you determine how powerful magic items should be based on its rarity. A common item is a maximum spell level of 1, meaning its spell effect should be equivalent to a level 1 spell. An uncommon item should mimic a maximum spell level of 3 or have a maximum bonus of +1. Rare should be a level 5 type item with a +2 bonus. Very rare should be an 8th level spell effect with +3 on your bonus. And legendary is 9 spell levels with a +4 bonus. So these are our definitions of these things here. Maximum spell level. The column on the table indicates the highest level spell effect the item should confer in the form of a once per day or similarly limited property. For example, a common magic item might confer the benefit of a level spell once per day or just once if it's consumable. A rare, very rare, or legendary magic item might allow its possessor to cast a lower level spell more frequently. So you could use like 9 first level spells. The idea here on this table is that maximum spell level doesn't necessarily mean it gets a 9th level spell effect. It has that many total spell effects to it. That could be 3 fireballs or somewhere in there. So you need to use your judgment on that. Maximum bonus. If an item delivers a static bonus to AC, attack rolls, saving throw, or ability checks, this column suggests an appropriate bonus based on the item's rarity. Legendary items should be the only thing getting into +4, very rares, or +3s. The last thing in this section is about attunement. Decide whether the item requires a character to be attuned to it to use its properties. Consider the following guidelines. Limit sharing. If having all the items in a party pass an item around to gain its lasting benefit would be disruptive, the item should require attunement. Limit stacking. If the item grants a bonus that other items also grant, it's a good idea to require attunement so characters don't try to collect too many of those items. And that's it. That's our information in the toolbox on creating magic items. Not a ton of stuff here. A lot of references to Chapter 7. So when we get to Chapter 7, we'll probably revisit the Chapter 3 DM's toolbox. Number one thing is modifying a magic item. Herein lies the thing. A potion can be a potion. Any spell effect that is replicated in one potion should be able to be made into any other potion. Altered forms, taking the properties of one item and applying to another item type is the idea. The cloak of protection becoming a circlet of protection is a comparable thing. You're not altering the item's properties. You are giving them opportunities to change their attunement slots to do things like that with the fun of it. Altered damage types. Yes, without minimal effort, just adding different types of damage to your items is going to be good enough to give you a little bit more of a flexibility in the creative aspect of things. And obviously combining items, be cautious with this. A helm of comprehend languages and a helm of telepathy means that your helm wearer can now read the minds and understand the languages of anyone that are within it. So keep in mind the context of your campaign, the difficulty, and your campaign theme as you get into creating combining magic items. I will go on the record to say 2014, there was a lot of magic items, but I still ended up making a lot of alterations personally myself. There's a lot of space in the gaps, so as long as you can learn how to do that, modifying magic items is a good start to creating magic items, okay? The creating a new item section, I wish it was a little meatier. It doesn't give you a ton of stuff. It gives you some basic guidelines for magic item power level, but I think this is lacking a little bit. Creating a new item is it's similar to modifying a magic item. Odds are, this is my opinion here, this is my advice. If you can make alterations to an item to suit your needs, there's no need to create a new item. Making a ring of the ram into a wand of the ram or the gauntlets of the ram are still giving you the same properties on a different item. Is it creating a new item? Some would say it is. But when you get into that point, make sure that you're paying attention to your power level. Okay, think it through. What's it going to look like when my characters hit monsters with this item? It's going to be really cool because you're going to be able to one-shot everything, and that'll be fun for the first couple of fights, but after a while, you're going to find yourself in a pinch. Likewise, the idea that an item is near useless, if you're thinking about giving a customized magic item as a reward, a specific award/reward for something, make sure it's useful. If it's just an add-on like the Staff of Flowers, things like that, they're just fun and silly. It doesn't necessarily have to always come into play for something a little bit more fun, a little bit more role-play driven. Keep that in mind when you're modifying and creating magic items. Is this something that's going to be turn in, turn out, constant use in combat? In which case, pay attention to balance. Or is it something fun, something more role-play, non-combat driven, which gives you a little bit more flexibility and play and room to play around with some creative ideas. Attunement is huge. Pay attention to what your characters already have in their attunement slots when you're creating new items. The idea with attunement is your players should be making the hard choice. Do I go with the Cloak of Protection or do I go with the Cloak of Displacement? If you're making multiple items that replicate each other into one attunement slot, pay attention to how this can be balanced. Ultimately, I think the guidelines in this section are legitimate mainly because each DM and each group's going to find their own level of magic use. Some campaigns are super high magic, some are a little bit lower. So as you create magic items, you're going to know what your group needs the best. Just use these guidelines focusing on balance, making sure that things are sustainable and consistent over the length of a campaign. That's kind of where we're going to leave off creating magic items. We'll revisit this when we get to Chapter 7. The next section that we're going to look at is creating a spell. Okay, creating a spell. What? Yes, we can create spells as DMs. 100%, totally. So, when creating a new spell, use existing spells as example. Here are some things to consider. Name. The spell must have a unique name. Balance. If the spell is so good a caster would want to use it all the time, it's probably too powerful for its level. Identity. Make sure the spell fits with the identity of those who can cast it. Sorcerers and wizards typically don't cast healing spells, for example. Spell duration, range, and area. A longer duration, greater range, or larger area can make up for a lesser effect depending on the spell. Utility. Avoid spells that have very limited use, such as one that only works against oozes. Few characters will bother to learn or prepare such a spell. The next section in here is spell damage. This is kind of important. For any spell that deals damage, use the spell damage table to determine approximately how much damage is appropriate given the spell's level. The table assumes the spell deals half as much damage on a successful saving throw or a missed attack. If your spell doesn't deal damage on a successful save, you can increase the damage by 25%. You can use a different damage dice than the ones on the table if the average damage is about the same. For example, you could change a cantrip's damage from 1d10, an average of 5.5, to 2d4, reducing the maximum damage but making an average result more likely. So here's your spell damage table. A spell level of a cantrip doing one target should do 1d10 damage. Multiple targets would be 1d6. A level 1 spell, one target at 2d10, multiple targets at 2d6. Level 2, 3d10, multiple targets, 3d6. Level 3, 5d10, one target, 6d6, multiple targets, even though our fireball does 8d6. Level 4, 6d10, 7d6. Level 5, 7d10, 8d6, multiple targets. Level 6, 1d10, multiple targets, 11d6. Level 7, 11d10 for a single target, 12d6 for multiple targets. Spell level 8, 12d10, 13d6 multiple. Level 9, one target can be 15d10, multiple targets will be 16d6. The next section is healing spells. You can also use the spell damage table to determine how many hit points a heal spell restores. A cantrip should not provide healing, it's resources. And that's all they're going to give us for creating spells in the Chapter 3 toolbox. Not a ton of stuff, but the stuff that's here is important. Number 1, obviously the unique name being what it is, so we don't get confused. Number 2, balance. I think that sets it really well. It says it very well. If the spell is so good, when you make this new spell, it's so good that the caster would use it every single turn, see Toll the Dead Eldritch Blast, it's probably too powerful for its level. Identity. Make sure the spell fits with the identity of those who can cast it. Sorcerers and wizards don't cast healing spells, for example. Your druids got a lot more of your primal nature elemental stuff going on. They don't necessarily have radiant damage as often as your clerics do, etc., etc. So this will be my little bit of advice here, okay? Before you get into creating a spell, make sure you understand the spells that are already in play. Make sure you understand the balance of them and the theme for each class. I am not trying to say memorize every spell, but I am saying be familiar with them. If you're not sure what spells are there, then maybe you should look at the spells that are there before you feel the urge to create a spell. The idea of creating a spell is to fill a gap from what's not already available in the vast library of 5e spells. But there are gaps in there, so here's some guidance to make sure that you do it in a balanced way. Avoid spells that have limited uses, such as those ones that go with oozes, 100% there. The spell damage, me personally, I disagree with this table. You're going to end up with some very, very overpowered spells at certain levels and underpowered spells at other levels. But again, make sure that when you create a new spell, use existing ones as example. Look at your fireball, look at your lightning bolt, look at your cloud kill. Understand the dynamics with those spells as you apply the damage and the levels to the spells that you're creating, okay? Healing spells, you have a lot of breadth. You're healing hit points. That's all it is. You can come up with different names, come up with different things, but ultimately the idea is still the same. At level 3, it should be potentially healing between 5 and 50 points of damage. Potentially, okay? These are useful for guidelines. Make sure that you are balancing them to your encounter. And obviously, I say obviously, but it's not. It may not be obvious. Make comparisons to spells that are already in play. When you finish writing up your new spell, look for the nearest tangential spell, the nearest one that's similar to it. And be honest with yourself. If I'm a cleric, is there a tough choice between this heal and that heal? If it's a no-brainer, then your spell is by default imbalanced. If every caster at your table is going to take your cantrip and use your cantrip every turn, then your cantrip might be a little overpowered. That's probably the best advice you can get when creating a spell. And I'm going to go ahead and leave off on this last on repeating this comment. If the spell is so good that a caster would want to use it all the time, it's probably too powerful for its level. I quote Toll the Dead as an obvious one. Anyone that has Toll the Dead keeps it and uses it. And the moment the person gets hurt, if they need resource-free combat, they're dropping Toll the Dead. Toll the Dead is a official spell in 5e, but it's in my opinion, it's so powerful that when players have the choice to use it, prepare it, they always prepare it. And given the choice between Toll the Dead and Firebowl or Toll the Dead and Sacred Flame, it's always going to be Toll the Dead. So that's a perfect example of something that might be a little bit imbalanced. So use that rule first. Use that guideline first when you're looking at your spell. Ask that honest question. From outside of that, man, you have some room to play with stuff. You can make a charm spell level 5, super charm, and make it last 10 minutes or something like that. You can increase the range on the spell. You can make a larger area for less damage. There's a lot of small alterations that you can make to spells that are already in play that will give you some customization. It will allow you to be creative, allow your players to feel something that they're doing something different without threatening balance, because that's the key in the DM's toolbox. How do we have fun with stuff without breaking our balance? But that's it for that one. Our next episode is going to be Curses and Magical Contagions. This one is a little bit short. Well, actually, it's pretty long, so this will probably be its own little section next. But hey, thanks so much for hanging out. Hopefully you're enjoying these videos. Hopefully you're enjoying our RTFM process. Getting into the meat, the nuts and bolts and the meats and potatoes first, and then kind of giving you my opinion afterwards. Appreciate it. Likes, follows, subscribes, push all those buttons, join us on Twitch, all that cool stuff. But more importantly, join us for more episodes of RTFM DMG with DM Geezer Chip. We'll see y'all soon.